Welcome to Be Less Stupid. I'm your host, Jon Hotchkiss. There's no time for nonsense. Let's get right to our top story.
They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists.
My name is Jose, and I come from El Salvador. I escaped from the violence that the LGBT community faces in my home country. I was abused, I was attacked by gang members.
How you doing, sir?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good.
Is everything okay?
Yeah, they just want to let you know you can't take pictures.
Well, I'm just saying I think I'm allowed to take pictures. You would prefer I didn't take pictures.
Yeah, I'm just doing what I'm doing.
I know. I don't want to make a hard time for you, but I'm doing a story about this place. I heard I heard some bad stuff about it.
You got an ID with you by chance?
But yeah, have at it.
In the event we have to do it to somebody else, we know what they're going through.
Yeah.
And so when we got pepper sprayed, we had a hose, and that's how you run the hose on you, and
It wasn't good,
then
was it?
you just hit. Pepper spray is meant to get somebody to comply
Right.
and stop fights.
Correct.
And I've used it before.
Yeah.
And then it's just getting.
Yeah.
90 miles north of Los Angeles, west of Victorville in Apple Valley's high desert, is California's largest illegal immigrant detention center. You go north on 395. If you get to the Winnebago where Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul are cooking meth, you've gone past the Adelanto Illegal Immigrant Detention Center. Or, as President Trump calls it, that place with the shithole people, the rapists, the ones with AIDS who live in huts, some of whom are good people. Adelanto has beds for about 2,000 male detainees and about 300 female. Across the U.S., ICE reports that the average daily population of the detained illegals in the U.S. is about 38,000. 38,001 if you count Melania Trump. 38,000 is a 43% increase over the Obama administration. However, President Trump's 2018 budget calls for an additional $1.2 billion in funding to increase the number of detention beds to 48,000, or one less, if Melania goes back to Slovakia. And before the end of this episode, I'm going to break some disturbing news about new constitutional violations of due process and excessive use of force by ICE officers and corrections officials at Adelanto's detention center.
I'm waiting for a call back, sir.
Yeah, no worries. But first, in the last year, there have been 5 successful suicides by detainees here at Adelanto and nearly 3 times as many attempts.
It's official. The White House tonight admits that the Mexican government will not directly pay for Trump's wall.
There's also been several suspicious deaths of detainees. Across the country, 12 immigrants died in U.S. detention in 2017, 10 the year before. Back in Adelanto in 2017, there was also a hunger strike by 9 detainees who were protesting humiliating and racist treatment by guards, sexual assault, legal paperwork that they'd been given only in English, rancid food, lack of clean water. Sounds like every guest's complaint at a Trump hotel. Where was I? Oh yes, the detainees were also on a hunger strike protesting excessive bail and being forced to wear clothing and underwear that were both dirty and worn previously by someone else.
Estamos encerrados donde no podemos muchas veces ni ver la luz del sol.
After peacefully refusing to eat, detainees were then forcibly coerced into behaving by guards wielding pepper spray. That pepper spray attack resulted in a massive detainee riot. All of which, I guess, explains why the media has been barred from touring the inside of Adelanto for the last 5 months, me included. I've been denied access by DHS on 6 separate occasions. So, the first question you probably have about this story is, hey, are you a real journalist? And if so, how come you're not wearing a suit? Well, the answer is, I don't want to wear a suit. And, well, this is my show. I pay for it. I write it, I'm the director, and well, I don't like suits. I'm much more comfortable dressed like this. And if it's important for you to see a news guy wearing a suit, I would respectfully suggest that you go watch a different free investigative story about criminal rights violations here at the Adelanto Detention Center. As for your second question, you're probably wondering, how does a person end up at Adelanto's processing center? Well, here's the answer. Immigrants to the U.S. can find themselves inside Adelanto after they seek asylum, typically at a U.S. border crossing like this one in San Ysidro. Asylum seekers come here to the U.S. to escape imminent grave danger from gangs, drug dealers, other criminals, or a violent and oppressive government. Immigrants can also be detained at Adelanto after being arrested by ICE agents during citizenship enforcement operations, or if they've previously served prison time for an unrelated crime and ICE picks them up for a deportation hearing. Under the Obama administration, a dedicated office staff developed a standard of care for detained immigrants. However, one of Trump's first acts as president was to close that office and fire the entire staff. Under the Obama administration, the rules for facilities detaining immigrants facing deportation included you had to check on suicidal inmates every 15 minutes. Inmates had to have their mental status evaluated frequently. Inmates who request medical assistance are supposed to receive it within 24 hours. Inmates are entitled to have guards speak to them in a language that they understand. If an inmate is held in solitary confinement for more than 15 days, the jail must notify immigration officials. And detainees get a minimum of 7 hours per week out in the yard. Now, compare that to the Trump administration, where things are, well, a little bit different. Officials will no longer offer translation services. Inmates have to request it. Instead of medical service within 24 hours, detention facilities are only now required to have procedures in place to administer medical care, but there are no guidelines for what those procedures should be. And instead of 7 hours in the yard per week, detainees just get a minimum of 2 hours per week outside. And get this, illegal immigrant detainees are not entitled to a lawyer. You know, if you get arrested and you can't afford a lawyer, the state will provide one for you at no charge. It's right there in the Miranda rights. Yeah, you see, it's different for illegal immigrants. If they can't afford a lawyer, they don't get one, no exceptions. Of the 40,000 or so illegals under detention right now in the US, just 16% have legal representation. Those that don't, well, they have to write their own briefs and do their own research in the law library, which they only get about 1 hour a day. Plus, get this, most of the reference books are in English.
There was no safe place for me in El Salvador. When I got here to the United States, I'm still dealing with all this trauma and all these difficult situations that I face in El Salvador. In 2010, I was detained by Immigration, and I was put in a detention center in El Paso, Texas for 5.5 months.
Now, of course, you know that in a criminal court, if the state loses, that's it. The state can't appeal a decision. However, in immigration court, ICE can appeal if a judge decides not to deport a detainee, in which case that detainee remains in detention. Another issue that leads to prolonged detention is the high cost of bail. The national bail average for detained illegal immigrants is $29,000, while in some instances bail is set as high as $45,000. One detainee from Ghana said, quote, that if he had $45,000 back in Ghana, he would be the king.
Being in this detention center made me feel really unsafe and really hopeless. I was facing deportation and I was scared of going back to my nightmares.
In 2015, a human rights group published a report entitled Abuse in Adelanto, in which they monitored 89 detainees over the course of 6 months, and their findings were, quite frankly, shocking. Extensive physical abuse of detainees by guards, failure to comply with DHS standards for medical care. They said that of the high suicide rate, clearly it is indicative that there is something deeply wrong within Adelanto. They said that detainees denied basic personal hygiene items and infrequent access to showers. They said that the guards were ill-trained, and it concludes the facility fosters a hostile environment where detained individuals are afraid to file grievances, where medical needs are neglected, and where staff retaliate when individuals attempt to assert basic human and constitutional rights. Now, let's say that you're suspicious of the work of human rights workers, right? Here is a second report on Adelanto. Overall, we identified problems that undermine the protection of detainees' rights, their humane treatment, and the provision of a safe and healthy environment. We had concerns about a lack of professionalism and inappropriate treatment of detainees by facility staff, which fostered a culture of disrespect and disregard for detainees' basic rights. They also added, we observed spoiled, wilted, and moldy produce and other food in the kitchen refrigerators, as well as food past its expiration date. Now, you're probably thinking, look at that, another example of some snowflakes, right? It's another soft on crime, hippie civil rights group, right? Actually, no. Those quotes are from a December 2017 report from the Office of Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security. It's a report from our own government, from the Trump administration, from the people actually detaining the illegal immigrants.
In 2012, I was granted asylum in San Francisco, California, and now I'm here to speak out and say that the asylum system is very important for the LGBT community and the all immigrant community in general, because it really saves our lives.
And that is not all. I can now report, having spoken to several sources who can confirm that guards and other prison officials are forcibly coercing detainees to sign forms in which they agree to voluntarily self-deport and give up the right to an immigration hearing. Now, you're probably wondering, who's behind all this? How did it get this bad? And is anyone providing any oversight? Well, on the next episode of Be Less Stupid, I'm going to tell you all about a company called GEO. They are an awful private prison company operating 3 detention centers in the US. They detain about 10,000 people each day, for which they are paid about $120 per person per day. And get this, they donated $1.8 million to support President Trump in 2016, including $250,000 to underwrite his inauguration festivities and $150,000 to Trump's super PAC on the day after the Obama administration announced plans to phase out private prisons because, quote, they do not maintain the same level of safety and security as federal prisons. It's the same day that GEO's stock fell 40%. Okay, that is it for this episode of Be Less Stupid. Make sure that you like our page. That way you're sure to see the next episode in our investigation. You can also find us on the web. You can also email us. And remember, please share this video on social media and leave a comment down below. Thanks to the new Facebook algorithm, your sharing and commenting is really the only way that a video like this will be seen. Anyway, that is it for this episode of Be Less Stupid. I want to thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. And remember, like our page so that you can see the next installment of our investigation. See you soon.